So, like a week ago, I made 2 videos about Crisis on Infinite Earths news. Both of them, the main thing I talked about were the certain characters or even groups, just characters from other TV shows appearing in the crossover. Namely, for the first video, it was Tom Ellis as Lucifer, and in the second video, it was just a couple Titans from Titans, both of which were really exciting because both of which are pretty good TV shows, that it was cool to see those characters, or it would be cool to see those characters team up with in the crossover and with the Arrowverse characters. However, as it turns out, it doesn't seem like either of those things are going to be happening. Lucifer may not be appearing in the crossover, and neither are the Titans. In this video, I'll go over how it seemed like they were, and then why it seems like they aren't, but also maybe there's a chance that they both are. So anyway, let's begin talking about Lucifer. So the actor who plays Lucifer, Tom Ellis, recently had an interview where he said that he's not appearing in the crossover, and the reason he was in Vancouver at the time was to visit a friend for their birthday. Now, I am inclined to believe him, however, the evidence does point to the contrary. Canada Graphs, the person who takes a lot of set photos for the Arrowverse, and is a very reputable source when it comes to these shows and what he saw, said that he saw Tom Ellis on the set of Crisis on Infinite Earths. That was the same time that Tom Ellis was in Vancouver, where they film all the Arrowverse shows, and including the Crisis, but also he said that he saw Tom Ellis hanging out in a bar with Tyler Hoechlin and another actor, but Tyler Hoechlin plays Clark Kent, aka Superman. Anyway, that, along with the fact that it's possible that the CW and Warner Brothers just wants to keep it a secret, even though it's already been leaked, and honestly, I don't know why they would do this. I mean, having Lucifer in the crossover, I do think would bring in a lot of viewers, because Lucifer has a very big fan base, but it's a fan base that I think is largely disconnected from the DC TV show, so if their character is appearing in the crossover, they probably might watch it if they weren't going to already, which I'm guessing some of them wouldn't have. So anyway, I do think that part of it doesn't really make any sense why the CW would want to deny the fact that he is in the crossover. However, I do think it's possible that they did do that, and that's why Tom Ellis is saying that he's not in the crossover, even though the evidence does point to the contrary. Now, in terms of my opinion, do I think Lucifer will appear in the crossover? At this point, I don't know. I was very surprised that he was going to be in the crossover, because he felt like I said so many times, a TV show that was, while it is based off something from DC Comics, it is so completely separate from DC Comics that I never expected it for him to appear in the crossover. But also, as a character, Lucifer is even more powerful than the Anti-Monitor. He's supposed to be the second most powerful being in the entire universe, or even the multiverse, second only to God himself, so he would be able to defeat the Anti-Monitor pretty easily if he was on the side of the good. So I am again inclined to believe, also with Tom Ellis saying this, that Lucifer isn't appearing in the crossover, which honestly I am not exactly 100% disappointed, because while I do think it would have been cool, it probably would have just been a cameo, as like I said, he would have kind of broken the tension or the threat level of the Anti-Monitor because he's more powerful than him. So anyway, I don't really think Lucifer would be appearing. I wouldn't be surprised if he does at this point because of what we've seen, but I do think it's possible that Tom Ellis just visited the set of Crisis on Infinite Earths and isn't actually going to be in the crossover. However, if that was the case, then I feel like Tom Ellis would just tell us that in that interview, like say that he was in the set of the crossover, but he wasn't actually filming, he was just visiting, so that kind of rules that out. Honestly, I don't know what's going on here. I do think it's possible that Lucifer will be appearing in the crossover, but because of what Tom Ellis says, because of the fact that Lucifer is more powerful than the main villain of the crossover, and if he was on the side of the good, he could take away the tension or the threat level or the menace of the Anti-Monitor, I'm now inclined to believe that Lucifer will not be appearing and will not be crossing over with the Arrowverse. So when it comes to the Titans, this case is a little bit confusing. Around a week ago, another Arrowverse YouTuber, Pagey, made a video saying that he saw a script from the Arrowverse from the Crisis, a script that had the Titans as a cameo, a very short cameo, where they show a shot of Titan's Tower where they look at the sky. Now, he elaborated on that, but it turns out he just assumed that it was talking about the DC Universe versions of the Titans, you know, the ones from the DC Universe with the 2 Robins, Hawk and Dove, and all those other characters who would have been so cool to see team up with the Arrowverse superheroes, especially characters like Superboy and the Robins, or even Cyborg from Doom Patrol, but it turns out that that might not be the case at all, and the script was not talking about the Titans at all. It seems like that the Titans, or this version of the Titans, will be set on Earth 9, and they'll have a cameo where they look up at the sky, where the antimatter wave that destroyed Earth 2 also ends up destroying that universe, which is obviously that was going to happen with a lot of universes. Not only was it already confirmed that the crossover will begin begin with the destruction of the universe, or of multiple universes, by an antimatter wave. That's also how the crossover of the Crisis began in the comics. However, one of those universes, it seems, is going to be Earth 9, home to some sort of version of the Titans. However, it doesn't seem like it's going to be the Titans that we know and already love. But instead, it's going to be some sort of Arrowverse version of the Titans, and not a group that includes Arsenal and Kid Flash, because it doesn't seem like either of them will be appearing in the crossover. For Kid Flash, it's confirmed, and for Arsenal, there were some set photos that reveal him crashing in Leon Yu, and if that's going to set up the Flash forwards, then he's not going to be appearing in the crossover, which is disappointing for both of them. However, it doesn't seem like they're going to be having a cameo, so whoever's on this Titans, I don't know. It could be Nightwing, Beast Boy, Raven, Starfire, and Cyborg. Maybe the same actors from the DC universe, or maybe new actors, which means that they just cast those characters and we didn't even know about that, or maybe we're going to be seeing the Earth 1 versions of those characters sometime down the line in the future. Honestly, at this point, I don't know. What Paige is saying here doesn't really make much sense to me, and at this point, we can't really prove any of this. We couldn't really prove that the Titans are going to appear initially. I just made a video about what Paige said, and it seemed like that was true. However, at this point, I honestly don't know what's going on. It's going to be some sort of Arrowverse version of the Titans on Earth 9, not connected to the DC universe, where they only have a cameo right before they are killed. So that's basically what's going on with the Titans. It's very confusing, so we'll just have to wait and see for if they're actually appearing on the Crisis, if Paige was right, and what this cameo actually means. So with those things out of the way, I wanted to go over the other Crisis news that we got from this week, starting with our first look at the Anti-Monitor. Okay, so it's not technically our first look at the Anti-Monitor, but it is our first look at the Anti-Monitor proper and how he's actually going to look on screen, because we did get concept art for the Anti-Monitor a couple months back. However, it seems like they made some drastic changes. Initially in the concept art, he looked really like just the Monitor, but more robotic, and I didn't really like that. For one, he looked way too similar to the Monitor, but also the fact that he was robotic made him way less, I don't know, human, or it made him way less menacing to me and more just different from what he should be. However, I am very glad with the changes they made to the Anti-Monitor here. He has the same exact suit, which I always thought looked cool in the concept art. However, they changed his face. He doesn't have the lines that the Monitor has, but also he, instead of being robotic looking, he has this kind of like drained look to him, where the life force was drained out of him. He looks very similar to White Walkers, more specifically the Night King, which is a comparison that's been made quite a lot, and that's a good comparison, because while those characters and the villain, the Night King, did not end up being a good one in Game of Thrones Season 8, just like everything else in that season, he was really menacing for like the entirety of the show before that, and with the Anti-Monitor here, he's going to have that menacing look, but also some lines, some motivation, and actual character development, which is something that the Night King had absolutely none of. So I do think it's probably going to end up being better than the Night King, but also he definitely in this photo feels like the Thanos of the Arrowverse, which is great because that's exactly what he is. The final bit of news has to do with another new character, a character who was incredibly significant in the original crossover, actually appearing, that character being Jim Corrigan, aka the Spectre. On October 14th, 6 days before I'm releasing this video, Stephen Amell tweeted this out, a tweet that seemed very, very hinty, tweeting, "Trying to relax after an amazing weekend, the Spectre of the crossover still looms large." Now, this is definitely not a regular tweet. By a lot of people, it seemed to a lot of people that this was hinting that the Spectre will be appearing in the crossover, which just 2 days after that was confirmed, as Stephen Lobo was cast as Jim Corrigan, aka the Spectre. Now, like I said, in the comics, the Spectre had a huge role in the crossover, as you see in basically any image where the heroes are fighting the Anti-Monitor. All the heroes are just fighting him, while the Anti-Monitor is mainly focusing on the Spectre, as they're the same size, and the Spectre is the one who's putting up the most fight, with all the other heroes not really doing anything, but just being there, I guess adding a little bit. So this means that the Spectre will probably have a fairly big role, at least in the fight against the Anti-Monitor, but I think it's very interesting because they cast somebody new for Jim Corrigan, even though there was already an actor who played him on Constantine, which is in the Arrowverse. Emmett J. Scanlan played Jim Corrigan in Constantine, and there was also a setup to be the Spectre. There was a character, I think her name was Rose, but she was able to have some sort of visions, and one vision she saw Jim Corrigan all blooded up but glowing green. This was an obvious reference to him becoming the Spectre in the future. However, now it doesn't seem like that's ever going to be the case, or if it is, he's being played by a new actor who doesn't really look very much like the actor in Constantine. In fact, he has an entirely different skin tone, which is, I guess, possible. But anyway, it's either he was recast or the entire first season of Constantine was retconned, which makes sense because there wasn't really much that happened in Constantine that's been referenced, and also they never even mentioned how the storyline of that season ended, as the finale never aired, and they just never mentioned it. So it's possible that that season isn't actual canon in the Arrowverse anymore, and Jim Corrigan in that universe or in that timeline never existed in this timeline. So now they're recasting him. However, even with this recast, which I think I don't really have a problem with, it's not exactly like I became attached to the character on Constantine. I just think it would have been really cool if he came back. However, I'm sure Stephen Lobo will be great as Jim Corrigan, but I do think this is interesting because there's some sort of connection here that kind of blows my mind. So Emmett played Jim Corrigan on Constantine, but he also went on to play another character, another fairly prominent DC character on Krypton. He played Lobo, and what's crazy here is that after Emmett played Jim Corrigan and then Lobo, he's now being replaced by a guy named Stephen Lobo, and that's after he was teased by Stephen Amell. So you take Lobo and Stephen together, you get Stephen Lobo playing the new Jim Corrigan, aka Spectre, which is the craziest coincidence to me. The Stephen Amell part, it's not really a coincidence because Stephen is a very common name, but when it comes to Emmett playing Jim, but then also playing Lobo and then being replaced by a guy named Lobo, it's the craziest thing to me, and there's no way they did it on purpose. It's just some sort of coincidence. So that is it for today's Crisis on Infinite Earths news. What do you think about everything I talked about? What do you think about the Anti-Monitor's look in the crossover, Stephen Lobo playing Jim Corrigan, aka the Spectre, and the fact that Lucifer and Titans don't seem to be appearing at all? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and if you like this video, make sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe, and thanks for watching.